Okay, it's going.
Okay, sorry, I'm pulling up my post. Okay, so do we want to talk about the fantasy chapter from Tunnel first? Since we all had to look at that, I guess.
Yeah.
I can't remember which page it was.
It's page 126.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Okay. Yeah. Well, I guess, what is it? I read a little bit more of it just because my question was about it too, but it was kind of interesting for me to read the I liked how it broke it down in like basic fantasy motifs because I never really thought about anything aside from just like fantasy in general, I didn't think there were breakdowns of it, but it makes sense. And then the whole like separate category of science fiction, that was pretty cool to look at because it's included, but not just because there's a realness to science fiction. So I don't know. It's interesting to me.
I thought it was really interesting after like reading all the different motives, like looking at the books that like Joy read to us because I didn't like if I didn't read about those motives first, I probably wouldn't think that it even fit into the category of like fantasy, even though it was not real because it talked about such like realistic topics, but in like a fantasy type way. So that was kind of I really enjoyed kind of comparing those two things.
Right. What was it? The in the mirror book. I can't remember which one. If that's the title.
Stranger in the Mirror.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was like I wasn't sure how it could quite be considered fantasy, except for the fact that he looks like an old man, basically. So that I guess that would be where it was. But it was just kind of like I don't know. I've never thought of a fantasy book just being like one aspect, and that makes it genre.
Yeah, I thought like it was kind of hard to interpret that book because like you don't know if that was like a dream or whatever, or if that whole like him being an old man like that was like a whole different world, so that could be one aspect of it. It was hard for me to figure out in what way other than the fact that he was old it was fantasy.
I was left with a lot of questions after that book. Like, I'm not a fan of those kind of books just because I like don't know what's going on in them. Like, what was going on with the grandpa? Was he there? Like, he wasn't there in the first place. They just talked about him.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And why? What was the specific lesson that the little boy was supposed to learn? Like, I feel like there was just the book was left up to the reader's interpretation, and
Yeah.
Mhm.
I
sometimes those
think
kind of books frustrate me.
yeah. Well, I think a little bit of like what Joy was saying too, like that he learned about like ageism kind of and how older people are treated differently when they get to be like where families don't want to take care more or can't.
Yeah.
And just what was it like everybody was shocked that the old man could do the skateboard tricks and whatnot. So it's like if they're fit enough, yeah, why not? But
Mhm.
it was just you wouldn't normally see an older person doing that normally, but I'm sure there are exceptions.
I'm sure.
Oh no. Mhm.
But I think those types of books
Oh,
would be
one
cool.
of the oh go.
Oh, sorry. I was just saying how I think those types of books would be kind of cool to like introduce to students in the classroom, just because I think they are kind of like they're really different from everything else that they're probably reading.
Yeah.
I'd like to see, since it is kind of up to interpretation, I'd like to see what the students kind of get from it. Like if it's different than what I think when I'm reading the book.
Yeah.
Oh, but go ahead. Sorry, Haida.
No, it's fine. I was what was it like the one of the second parts of my question since we're talking about tunnel, was that like what does tunnel mean by the truth in fantasy? And I liked how even within like fantasy there was still like lessons like that we're trying to find, or like human connections and universal nature that we're kind of like trying to like connect with or look for, which was pretty, I don't know, it was interesting. Like even within a book like Charlotte's Web, where it's all animals, there's still gonna be like there's some metaphorical connection to like human nature, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I had that section too, and I thought it was really interesting that like it was saying that it like captures the essence of like our emotions and like our dreams and our hopes and everything. And so it really has like a metaphorical like I don't know, way of telling the stories of like life and just like in a roundabout way. And there was a quote that Tunnel like quoted Lloyd Alexander, and it's in my thing. I said it's that both forms have similar goals, and this is talking about but realism walks where fantasy dances. And I really liked that quote, just because like they both have similar goals and like ideas, but they have different ways of getting to that goal.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, and just like thinking about that, like especially with like the motives and like what you were just talking about, Alexis, like it just made me think about, well, the first thing that I thought about when I heard fantasy was Harry Potter, of course. And so I was thinking about how all those things can relate to the things that happen in Harry Potter and like the characters and how relatable they were, and how they showed emotion, and even though they were wizards or whatever, they definitely were very relatable, even though they could do many things that we obviously can't do in real life.
Right. Yeah, and then even with like getting into like the science fiction stuff, so I read The House of the Scorpion, and like I don't think cloning is possible yet. I mean, at least not for humans. So just kind of like out of this world kind of like ideas, or just way far in the future kind of ideas. Just makes you think about, I don't know, life and what we're trying to do here, or what scientists are trying to do, because that's some pretty crazy stuff, cloning a person. But yeah.
I feel like for students, I feel like for different ages of students, they relate to different types of fantasies better. Like I forget what kind. I think it was the science fantasy or something that was like categorized as like the Hunger Games and that sort of book. I feel like those are for like a lot of students in middle school and high school enjoy those type of books, and like for the younger students, they are more like Harry Potter and like what we typically would think of as a fantasy book. I don't know. I feel like those different types of fantasies could be classified as different age groups tending to like them.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's also like the reading abilities too, because I mean, like our choices this week were chapter books, so they're a little bit higher like reading levels, and they involve more concepts that would be easier for like middle school and high school kids to read. So I don't know. I that could be one of our questions. Maybe are the books that we read this week, appropriate, or were they accessible to younger, like elementary school aged kids?
Yeah.
Or would it just be like high school?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I guess all of the books that we've read could, like the chapter books, could be read aloud by the teacher as like an end of the day sort of thing. But then again, like you want them to be able to explore that genre on their own too, and not have to be led by you all the time.
Right, yeah. Um, yeah, I don't know.
Let's go down. This week I really liked the video of that Neil Gaiman something, his poem reading. I really liked that poem, and I think that's like was it in a full book that was just filled with his type of poems, right?
Yeah.
So
I
yeah.
think that would be a good thing to introduce to our students because as I was reading that, I was like imagining every like folktale, like folk story I've ever heard, like, and I could put a story to each stanza or each line.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that would be a good thing
Right.
to bring into our classrooms.
Mm-hmm.
For sure. Yeah, I said the same thing in my gut that I was like, what was it? The line where it says walk through the house, take nothing, eat nothing. Like I immediately thought of like Alice in Wonderland
Yeah.
at that point.
Yeah.
I was just like every so often I was like, oh hey, there's Narnia. Oh, that's Alice in Wonderland. Oh, that could be Cinderella. Oh wait, hey. Like just it just melded everything together. But it was really cool because you could take all of the make it into a whole different world,
Yeah.
a melding of every fantasy and fairy tale.
You could like create like a writing thing for students where each like a group of students gets this stanza and then this group of students get that stanza and they create their own fairy tale based off of those instructions or something. That would be something cool
Yeah.
to do.
Mm-hmm.
That'd be fun. I like that. Yeah.
I have a question. So it relates to the Lois Lowry in her video about people like scrutinizing The Giver. My question is, are fantasy books the most commonly scrutinized books out of all the genres because of the roundabout ways they talk about things?
Hmm.
So I guess that could be a money question. I mean, it's not.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I feel like a lot of it could be, I know, like, I had like a friend growing up, like, she is very into Harry Potter, and like, when her relatives, like, she had really religious relatives, and when they would come over, she had to hide all her Harry Potter stuff because they think, like, magic is, like, of the devil and all that stuff, so maybe that is one way that they're getting criticized more than others because of, like, I don't know, that kind of, like, I don't know, religious kind of aspect, even though it's not religious, but they take it in that way.
Yeah.
I
Like,
think
is there
that
one of those 6 motifs that sets people off and makes them skeptical?
Yeah, I think that's a really good one. Like one in particular.
Yeah.
well, I also connected that video that you're talking about to the article, the Leaving Poverty Behind, the Social Construction of Class, because she was saying that, like, I've never read The Giver, but she was saying that The Giver kind of talks about how, like, there's no problems because, everybody's the same. There's no money, there's no crime, so there's no, like, racism. And so I think that, like, the roundabout way that she's discussing, like, the issues that we have is also very controversial, and, like, which is, I don't know, I think it's really interesting that, like, that could be why a lot of people are saying that it's not schools and stuff like that, because it is questioning, like, our social, like, the construction of our society, really, and, like, why it's the way it is, and the, like, mainstream and dominant views of, like, how we are. I don't know. Which I think it's good for, like, our students to question those things.
Yeah.
But I think that might be why it's, like, also people don't like that it's questioning, how we are now. I don't know.
Yeah.
thought that was interesting how she talked about like censorship and how everyone or it's so often that they're trying to censor her books. I wonder also like because I don't really hear about censorship with like other types and other genres, so I wonder if that's also the most censored genre or if it's but I know they're also like starting to try to censor like older books that we had to read in like high school, like Huck Finn and stuff like that because of a lot of like the racial stuff that's discussed, but overall I feel like fantasy would be the one that people would try to censor the most.
I'm just writing down our muddy question.
Did anyone read City of Beasts?
Yeah.
Yeah.
How did you like feel about that? I was like kind of about it.
Slow in the beginning. I don't like when there's like mystical creatures in books. Like I like Harry Potter, but I'm very picky about fantasy.
I am too.
So,
Yeah.
I agree.
and I wasn't a fan of that book.
Yeah, I wasn't the biggest fan either.
After like reading The Tunnel, about like the truth in fantasy and stuff, I was like trying to find my mirror and everything in that book. And I think that like his emotions and stuff, his mom like having cancer and stuff, and just having to like split from his family, but then like going on his whole trip and like get to the Amazon is kind of harder to find that truth in, I guess. I don't know. I guess it really was that like, he's maturing over the time of the book. Like in the beginning he was throwing fits and like I don't know. It was just kind of hard to find, I guess,
Yeah,
for me.
it's definitely hard to like identify with like the characters in the book just because I think it was so far like fantasy and like there were so many mythical things that were happening in the book.
Yeah.
What was the other one that people could have read?
Yeah, I
House
didn't.
of Scorpions.
House of Scorpions. Haida, you said you read that one a long time ago, right?
Yeah, I read this in like I don't know, basically when it came out, I think. I don't what year was it? I don't remember right now off the top of my head. But yeah, I read it probably for like some book program thing or whatever. And when I was younger, I just blew through books and didn't really think about what I was reading. I just like
Same.
gobbled them up and then it's like I'm done.
Mhm.
So I don't know, this second time through, like being able to look at it a bit differently it was definitely better for me. But it was still kind of like I don't know, that makes sense to me. One of the questions that she has at the beginning, like 4 questions that Joy posted, was like, how might the family tree at the beginning symbolize systemic poverty and the impact of immigration? And I actually had like a really hard time answering that question, even though I had read the book.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I didn't really know how to answer that because I didn't choose that one to read. So it's like, oh, I don't know.
Here's the family
I
tree.
looked it up online, so that kind of helped. But I feel like I needed more like backstory from the book
Right.
to answer the question well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, the way that I was kind of talking about it was like the El Patron, which is like the Spanish translation to English is literally the boss. So
Yeah, that's kind of what I
I
wrote
was,
about mine too.
so I was like, I don't know, that kind of thing where he's like the overlord kind of idea kind of brings about the oppression kind of idea to me, but I couldn't really articulate, I guess, what I was trying to say there.
Mhm.
And then I don't know, the impact of immigration, that one was a little hard too. I mean, half of the family is dead in this tree, and like 6 of them have been deserted in Mexico.
Mm.
So I don't know.
Mhm.
I guess that could be one of our buddy questions. Why did you give that question to us, Joy?
Yeah, there you go.
Because I'd like to know what you were thinking.
Mhm.
Should we talk about Angel City?
No, I don't think so.
Yeah,
Well, I really
I
liked
like
Angel
it.
City, but I wish that they kind of would have made the book a little bit longer to explain more about the little boy, about Juan's culture, or like extended that part a little bit more. I guess it's a children's book, so they can't go too in depth with that kind of thing.
Mhm.
But I really liked how Pop Pop really took into consideration his Georgia roots and molded them with Juan's heritage, and he took the time to learn or attempted to learn Spanish at least. And I think that is a really powerful message that we can send to our students. Like, hey, you may be from different cultures and speak different languages, but like you can relate to another person. And with Juan losing his friend Chucho, I think it was,
Mhm.
like that's a maybe not everybody has lost their best friend, but they've most likely lost someone in their life that they can relate to the story.
Mm, yeah. I My mirror was actually from this book, and I couldn't identify with like the loss that Juan had, but I like being able to see how much effort Pop Pop put into, learning for his new son and sharing his home culture because he has one aspect, as well as trying to learn so much from like his neighbors and stuff, and even like the song that they sing for like getting better. My grandma used to do that to us all the time. So when I read that, I smiled a little. I was just like, oh, but I don't know. I really like it because it kind of connected like with me and my family. How like all my aunts and uncles they grew up in Central America, and so they try to pass along like what they've learned from there, but they also had to grow up here too. And so like when we were growing up, they gave us a little bit of both. So I don't know. I liked that aspect that Pop Pop tried so hard to make it so that Juan wasn't gonna lose his like heritage or like where he came from.
Yeah.
We have all our muddy questions.
Um, I only have 2, unless I didn't get one.
Okay.
Let me look back through my post to see if I have any questions.
I don't know. What do you guys think about the which one was it? The video with like the money distribution or the wealth distribution in the United States? Did you watch that one?
Shocked.
Mhm.
Oh, I did have a question about that one. Is there a way that we can give that information to our younger students, like in a kid-friendly version? Or like how would we bring that up to our students without such a technical video, you know? Because I feel like that video would be so hard to show to an elementary student, like an elementary
Right.
classroom. But it's important that because they're for third to fifth grade, they're thinking about money. They know that there's different, like my friend next door doesn't have as much money as my family, or something like don't go to that neighborhood or don't go to this neighborhood. Like they know those type of things. They're thinking about those class dynamics. So is there a way that we can show them that sort of video in student-friendly, kid-friendly terms?
Yeah. I don't know. The only thing that I could think about in that was like making the information a little bit like more accessible, maybe a different sort of table, because like that even the person in the video was like, so this is one, but I see it better in this one, so maybe there's one that's like easier to look at or understand.
Mhm.
I don't know, like you know how we change all of our like math questions in like 381, 382, and we had to
Yeah.
write um like the worded answers, so maybe like make like a metaphor for it and then try and like connect it back. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
Weird idea in my head.
It's not weird, you're thinking. Okay.
Yeah.
Are we good for all of our content?
I think well, we covered quite a bit of it. There was a lot this week, so I think
Yeah.
we covered a fair amount.
Yeah.
I think we hit everything as long as nobody has any burning questions they want to comment on.
No? All right, should we call it good then?